Welcome to the Retzel Health Law Hotspot. Health Law Hotspot is a podcast for physicians and health professionals that covers the legal issues and trends that affect the healthcare industry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Health Law Hotspot. I'm Ericka Adler, shareholder and leader of the healthcare practice of Retzel and Andrus. Today, I'm here with Dennis Thornton. He works with CARR, C-A-R-R, CARR, and he's a healthcare real estate advisor. He works in Chicago and various other areas, and he and I have worked together over the years. And I'm very excited to have you here, so welcome.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So today what we want to talk about is what is a healthcare real estate advisor? What do you do and why does a healthcare practitioner even need someone like you?
Oh, that's a great set of questions there. So CARR, I'll first of all describe what CARR is. CARR is a national company. We have real estate brokers in just about every market. I think every market in the country, except for maybe one state, we're having. I think it's Hawaii. You have to be present in Hawaii to have a real estate license there. So that's the one we're missing. But real estate brokers in every market. And what we do is we represent tenants and buyers. So we don't work for landlords and sellers, but we stay on the one side of the transaction table to reduce any potential conflict of interest. So we're representing tenants and buyers, and all of our clients are healthcare practitioners. That could mean a dentist, a dermatologist, med spa, veterinarian, you name it. And so we have this set of brokers throughout the country that have local knowledge and represent doctors or healthcare practices in those markets. And we help doctors with finding space to rent or lease, finding space to purchase, land to purchase for their practices. And we also work very hard to help them renegotiate their leases and lease renewals. So.
All right, so you play a lot of different roles. I know when we've worked together in the past, it would be when somebody is getting a new lease, they're looking for space, new space, or they might be involved in a transaction that has a real estate component. So when you get together and you're working with someone, what do you bring to the table that, I'm a lawyer, I work with real estate lawyers, that a real estate lawyer, let's say, is not able to do, just so people understand kind of the different roles.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, that's a great question because there are, especially in the lease renewal scenario, there are legal firms or attorney firms that claim that they can help renegotiate leases. And when it comes to the legal language, absolutely. I always recommend to every one of my clients that they have great legal representation that does the sorts of things that they need done regularly on every day. So if you need a lease reviewed, make sure you're hiring an attorney that does lease reviews and not someone who does, family law or something like that. And it's a stretch for them to do the specialty work that the dentist or the doctor might need. So with that being said, if someone was to, for example, contact an attorney or a legal firm regarding a lease renewal, the legal language part, yes, that's something that they can work with. But when it comes to having that local economic knowledge of the marketplace, generally an attorney won't have that. So understanding whether there's even something to negotiate on a lease rate or on, tenant improvement allowance or free rent or anything like that. Every market is different. And every market has timelines that vary, and there's a variety of different ways that a local real estate broker who specializes in healthcare can identify those things and then thus properly negotiate them for their clients. So it's really just a matter of having local knowledge and in the real estate world, in the commercial real estate world, in the healthcare commercial real estate world. And having that very specialty knowledge is what allows you to get the very best possible terms for your client when you're negotiating either a purchase or a lease.
So you mentioned a couple of things that you kind of try to negotiate on behalf of your clients. What are some of the things that come up in a lease negotiation that people may not even realize are negotiable? What types of perks are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really, we always kind of we shoot from the angle that everything is negotiable, right? And so if there's parking spaces out front and you have a lot of elderly patients and you really need close parking spaces, you might be able to get parking spaces that have your practice's name on them so that your elderly patients can park in them and have easy access to your location. Signage is another one. There's certainly signage requirements that a practice needs in most cases, especially in retail. And there's going to be opportunities to negotiate signage on the front of the building and or on a pylon sign or a monument sign, things like that. So signage is one, and then also, some of the legal language terms we can begin the negotiations, get them put into an LOI, so that when we do get a draft lease back from the landlord, then the attorney can take those and modify the legal language in it to make sure that it's just right. And things like eliminating competition in the property. And perhaps you're a dentist and you want to go into a retail property, and you need to be able to count on the fact that the landlord's not going to drop another dentist in there. So you want that exclusivity for any competitor that might come into the property. That's something that we can drop into the LOI, and then the attorney afterwards, when they're massaging the language in the lease, can massage the language in that so that it accommodates the client in the best possible way. Um, Another one, a big one that sometimes we run into, not too often, but it can be a real killer, is a gross up clause, which means that if you have a gross up clause in your lease, that you're responsible for paying the taxes and common area maintenance of the vacant spaces in the property. And that's something that if the property is full, someone might not think a lot about it, but that's something that if it's in the lease and a couple of vacant spaces go vacant, then you could be on the hook as a tenant for their tax and common area maintenance and insurance on their space. And that can be hike up your monthly rent in a huge way. And it's just something that we try to catch and then allow the attorney on the team to massage the language or eliminate the language if need be. So really, we kind of come from the thought process that everything is negotiable, not just lease rate and tenant improvement allowance money and free rent, but really any other little thing that the tenant might think is valuable to them, we try to get for them.
So when you go and you're looking for free rent or an allowance or whatever these things are, how often is the landlord receptive? And are there certain type of landlords that you will automatically, find a positive response from and others that absolutely will not talk to you? How can we tell?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Every landlord's different, and frankly, it could be different today than they were 3 months ago. Yeah, so you really have to go about it. The best possible way that you can negotiate a lease, or a purchase really is to have options. So we always try to take our clients out for a tour and have 2 to 3 to 4 possible opportunities for them that we can negotiate on simultaneously. And then, you look the landlord in the eye and say, hey, landlord, we love your property, but you just should know that there are 2 or 3 others that we're negotiating with at the same time. So sharpen your pencil, try to address all of the things we have in the LOI, and try to improve your opportunity to get this tenant into your property rather than have them go down the street and go into another property that you don't really compete with necessarily, but you do in a way if you want great tenants. And luckily for us, healthcare tenants, they're the kind of tenants landlords go to bed dreaming about. I mean, they're long-term, low risk. They do take a little bit of upfront money and concessions to get them into the property. But once they're in the property, they're very likely going to stay for a long period of time, well beyond their original lease term, which is normally a 10-year lease term. So you've got, this feeling we have as healthcare, or the healthcare tenants should understand that they're the best possible tenant for the landlords. So if we can set up a couple of different options for them and we go to the landlord understands the situation that they're in, and they're going to be more receptive to any kind of negotiations we might try to have with them. So.
That makes sense. So, I mean, obviously, they're going to have more sophisticated landlords and less sophisticated ones. We recently did a transaction where it was just a personally owned building. And it was a very difficult negotiation. Just somebody who'd owned it for many decades and didn't really understand the things that were being asked for and was uncooperative. So, do you find like when you have to deal with an individual versus a company type owner, that it's a different experience? Is one better than the other? Is it a red flag when you're going to a building and it's a certain type of owner or not? And does that affect what you recommend to your clients?
It does, and yes, you what you described is what we call a mom and pop type landlord, right? Where they have basically one property or two properties and not very sophisticated. They're personally invested in the property, so they take things personally, you know. And typically, the best scenario is a property where there's a listing broker, you know, someone who's being paid to lease the space or sell the property, and it's not emotionally involved in the property. So it's not the owner of the property that you're dealing with. And then that all the information that we send across gets filtered in essence before it goes to the owner so that they understand how the owner is going to react, so they have the ability to present the information in the best possible way. But you know, you always have to remember, if there's more than one opportunity, if you have more options than just the one, then you always can say to the landlord, well, you know, if you don't do this sort of thing, then we're just going to go down the street. And, you know, that's a hard thing for a dentist or someone that has a lot of infrastructure built into their practice, into the property. It's a hard thing for them to want to get up and go, but you'd be surprised at how many times, when we're working through a lease renegotiation, a renewal, that we take the doctors out as if they're leaving and show them other spaces and negotiate on other spaces. And you'd be surprised how many had no intention of leaving, but found something better in the long run for their practice and for them, and they end up moving. And so that landlord that you described, you said it was a difficult scenario where they didn't understand what you're trying to negotiate. They weren't budging on some things, probably personally invested in the property, right? And but likely you didn't have another option sitting right on the side of on the other side saying, landlord, if you don't do this, it's okay. You know, if this isn't right for you, it's okay. Then it's not right for us either. And we're just going to go down the street. And so that those options give you the most power, and they have to be real. You can't just make it up. You can't just have smoke and mirrors and the landlord's just going to bow down to everything that you want to do. It has to be
Right.
real. There has to be a real property for them to go into.
Okay. So, everybody knows that no one ever wants to pay for legal fees. That's a given, right? Um,
Yeah.
and so when I suggest to clients sometimes that they talk with someone like you, because really, we're lawyers, we're not out there, knowing what the right price per square foot is or whatever it is, and we suggest working with someone like you. The first thing I get is the pushback, what's this going to cost me? I don't want to spend money on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what answer do you give to that? How does the financial piece of this typically work?
No, it's the best answer of all. The landlord pays our fee every time. So our clients never pay us. It's just the way real estate works. Commercial real estate, sellers and landlords pay all fees of leases, property purchases, lease renewals, all those things. There's a landlords, especially the sophisticated landlords, will have budgets put in place for all real estate fees. And so what happens is there's a real estate fee. Let's say there's a transaction that happens. Let's say it's a lease renewal. The lease renewal, we help a doctor renegotiate their lease. They end up staying in the property and they have better terms than what they had before we engaged with them. And they sign the lease. And then what happens is there's a commission that's paid on that lease renewal. And it's usually paid directly to the listing broker. And then the listing broker splits that with us. So we would actually take half of what the listing broker makes, and the landlord doesn't pay any more money whether we're involved or not. So it's really a win-win for the doctors. And frankly, when I started doing this more than 11 years ago, I didn't believe that it was going to be true. I thought, man, this is too good to be true. There's no way the landlord's going to pay our fee after we negotiate against them or with them for the best terms for our clients, but they do. And it's just part of the way the system works. And in the long run, the landlord wins because they get a long-term lease with a reliable, low-risk tenant. The doctor wins, the client wins because they have better terms than they had before. And so the bottom line gets better for them. Both the listing broker and the tenant broker, which is what CARR is, win as well because we get paid for our work. So it's hard to believe, but the doctor never pays us, which is a great thing.
Well, I think that's a great answer. I guess one last thing I'm wondering is, are there mistakes that you see your clients making, either before they come to you or after they've come to you, that you wish you could tell them, don't do this? And what would that be?
There's really two. The first one is they wait too long to reach out to us. They get themselves into a very short time line for getting whatever it is that they want done. Like for example, with a lease renewal, you need about 18 months before the end of the lease to start the action, because we're going to go out and tour, we're going to look at things, we're going to negotiate on things. We still need to be able to, if there's some construction work that needs to be done to move, we still need time for that. And you don't want to, in a perfect world, you don't want to be spending double rent where you are now and rent somewhere else. And you don't want to run into a situation where you don't have enough time to get everything done, because in most leases, you have to start paying more money per month if you stay longer than what your lease term is set up for. So many times it's double rent, so the timing is important. About 18 months ahead of a lease renewal is important. And really, if you want to move or buy a building, about 18 months it's about the right time to start talking to a real estate broker about it. The second thing that our clients do that really, I think, gets them into trouble is discussing any of this with their current landlord and or with any properties that they want to go move into. It's very common for doctors to go out and kind of take the bull by the horns. It's what they do in their business. And they take the bull by the horns and they go out and they look at properties that they might want to move to or buy. And it's best to go in represented, whether it's with CARR or with another company in your market that does what we do. It's just better to be represented, because if you're a doctor, you work on patients, you do those things all day long, where, I would never go out and try to work on a patient because I do real estate, right? And for a doctor to go out and do real estate when they don't do it every day it puts the possibilities in the deal at jeopardy, and that they might not get everything that they potentially can if they go in and try to do it themselves. So by far, that's the biggest issue, is that doctors go out and try to do it themselves. I hand it to them for trying to do the work themselves and try to take the bull by the horns. It's what they do with their businesses.
Right.
But when it comes to real estate, they should, and with legal things, if they try to start negotiating legal language in their leases or their employment agreements or anything like that without talking to an attorney, it's the same scenario. I'm sure if I was asking you the same question, you'd probably say, yeah, it's the doctors that try to do it themselves that we have the most problems with.
Right. The piece of advice I always give is to make sure you're surrounding yourself with the best possible team, right?
Right,
And
right.
that's not only getting good real estate advice, but legal advice, financial advice, whatever it is. Well,
Yeah,
just like a doctor has, or any licensed person has an expertise in their area, so do we, right? So we bring to the table the expertise like you do. And
right.
that's really why I wanted to get you here, because I always talk to clients who've already negotiated their lease, or they want us to do it, and I'm trying to convince them to use a broker, or their brother-in-law is doing it for them, or whatever it is. But I think it's because they don't want to spend the money, and I think if they understood they could get the skills without it costing them anything, that they would be much more interested in knowing more about what's out there to help them get the best deal possible.
You bet. And one of the things I always say, especially to a dental practitioner, is I say, listen, you can go to an orthodontist and get a root canal, but it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be painful. I mean, if you had to, you could do it, right? You're better off going to an endodontist, right? So you pick someone who does a specialty that you need, and surround yourself, make team members around you that actually work in the area that you really need help with. And that's why, for us, we love working hand in hand with attorneys like you, because you're specialized and you really understand working with leases and purchase agreements. And that's our world. And having a partner like you help, or team member like you helping a client, is just, it's so much easier than someone who comes along, like you said, and say, oh, my brother, he's an attorney and he really wants to do, and it's just so hard to work with someone like that because they're not specialized.
Right. I get it. All
Yep.
right. Any final piece of advice you want to share?
I think, maybe, one of the things that I'm always amazed with is that, no matter whether we have a war or the interest rates go up, I mean, there's still a demand for healthcare real estate transactions, whether they're lease renewals or new offices or expansions or whatever it is. And don't wait too long. Really don't delay the growth that you have coming because you think the interest rates are too high or you think it's not the market's too unsteady or something. I mean, you have to believe in yourself as a practitioner and understand that you drive the future. So don't delay in your growth.
Yeah, I agree. And one last thing I'll add is that, one of the things we know is how beautiful doctors' offices are these days, right? And to really, you may be in the same place for a really long time, but it may look like that, right? Sometimes I'm surprised when I go to doctors' offices that it looks like it's 50 years old. How do they compete when you go to a beautiful new office? And I know it's not important, it doesn't speak to the skill of the practitioner, but people do notice it. You
Oh yeah,
can get some great terms where you are now, or you can get into a space with some great terms and it doesn't have to cost you, a crazy amount, which I think is what holds people back. So I think
definitely.
it's a great time to explore, improving your office or moving to a new space and contacting someone like you to find out. I mean, gorgeous offices are just the thing right now, right?
Yeah, they are. And it can attract even, I hate to say this, but maybe even better employees, right? I mean, the nicer your space is, someone looks at it and says, oh, I can make the same amount of money over here in this 70-year-old practice, or I can be making the same amount of money over here in this brand new one. I think I'm going to go for the brand new one, and you might find that just getting employees, not necessarily better, I shouldn't say that, but uh, update your employees or whatever you want to call it. It's just it increases a number of opportunities as well as the patients enjoying it. So yeah, yeah,
All right.
good.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. And to all of you listening, I'll post this with your contact information so they can definitely reach
Thank you.
out to you directly. And if anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to me. This is the Health Law Hotspot. You can see more of our podcasts at ralaw.com. And I'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
The Retzel Health Law Hotspot is made available by the firm and its attorneys for educational purposes and to provide general information, not to provide specific legal advice. Use of the Retzel Health Law Hotspot does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and the firm or any of its attorneys. The Retzel Health Law Hotspot should not be used as a substitute for competent legal advice, and you should contact an attorney in your state about any legal needs or questions you may have.